Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking on a source that is really unlike anything we've tackled before.
Yeah, definitely.
We aren't, digging through dusty archives or scientific journals this time.
No scrolls involved.
No scrolls. We are diving into a conceptual script, one that imagines the voice of, well, one of history's most compelling and, let's face it, controversial figures, Cleopatra.
Right.
Speaking directly to us now in the modern digital age.
It's a truly fascinating premise, isn't it? The source material, it's called Cleopatra Talks, Episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
And its structure as this philosophical monologue delivered across time. Its goal isn't just looking back at history.
No, it seems much more ambitious.
It is. It's designed to extract Cleopatra's core wisdom, her thoughts on power, identity, legacy, and then hold that ancient strategic mind up against the totally alien structures of, well, the internet empire we live in today.
We're following a spirit, the script says, that literally wakes not in marble halls but within glass screens.
Quite the image.
It really is. So the mission for us in this deep dive is to try and extract those lasting truths, the voice, as she calls it, that Cleopatra believes remains centuries after her physical empire just crumbled.
And that contrast is absolutely key.
Yeah. How did the last queen of Egypt define power back then? And how does that same intelligence view the anonymous algorithmic power structures that kind of rule our screens and behaviors today?
The material handles that transition brilliantly, I think. It's laid out in 6 distinct scenes.
Okay.
It moves conceptually, starting from her final moments, 30 BC Alexandria,
Right at the end.
all the way to her philosophical reflection in our modern era. So it lets us track her journey, from being a ruler, dealing with physical legions, Roman politics,
Yeah, very tangible threats.
to becoming this spirit-analyzing digital influence. It's quite a leap.
And crucially, the script feels immersive. It uses incredibly rich sensory language to bridge those worlds.
Oh, definitely.
We start with, the soft sound of an Egyptian harp, the heavy scent of myrrh. It really grounds you in that ancient world's, density.
Yeah, the weight of it.
And then suddenly we're shocked by this sharp, cold electric hum and the frantic sounds of typing.
That clash, the
Yeah.
signal, right? We've crossed the threshold. We're in her new world, which is our world.
Exactly.
So throughout this dive, we'll be unpacking that central theme, the fundamental difference between power that's fleeting, beauty, armies, territory,
To disappear.
right, versus influence that she argues is permanent, intellectual. We're looking for her voice, her vision, and maybe most importantly, the narrative control she fought so hard for, even in defeat.
Okay, so let's start right there then. At that moment, the moment her historical power began its inevitable failure. Okay, let's unpack this opening scene. Scene 1, the awakening. It's Alexandria, 30 BC. The setting feels intimate, but also heavy with destiny.
Very much so. The sun's setting over the Nile. She's facing her reflection.
Yeah, and she immediately conducts this fierce self-assessment. She looks beyond the popular myth, the story, history, has been so eager to cement. And her initial realization is just an immediate rejection of that superficial narrative, the one Rome and eventually history would try to impose on her. She reflects, history remembers me as a woman of beauty, but beauty fades.
Which is profound, right? Because it acknowledges that the very things used to sensationalize her, that supposed enchantment, the physical charm, they were temporary political tools, maybe, but not the source of her real strength.
Exactly. They were means, not the end. And she extends that same idea, that transience, to the political reality of ancient rule itself.
How so?
Well, she realizes power, too, slips like sand through the fingers.
Ah, okay.
That's the brutal reality for anyone who rules just through physical dominion, right? Military might, territorial claims. Those are inherently unstable structures, always vulnerable to the next conquering army, the next shift in allegiance. So that realization forces her to confront the ultimate question of legacy. If beauty is ephemeral, if physical power is unstable, what actually lasts?
And she names it explicitly. What remains is the voice, the truth no dagger can silence.
The voice.
Yes. This becomes her core operating principle, the thing she decides she has to preserve above all else. It's not the physical body, not the throne that ultimately matters, but the intellectual and spiritual legacy, the vision. That's what has to outlive the empire.
And just as she's facing this imminent end, this collapse, she receives the oracle's prediction, which is really the crucial setup for her whole centuries-long journey in this script.
It is. The oracle confirms the inevitable. warns her, your time is ending and the world beyond Rome, the distant future. They will not know your language.
Which must have been devastating. Your culture, your words lost.
Absolutely. But this is where the strategic mind, the queen, takes over from the despairing individual. She gets the bad news, her specific culture, her language will be lost. But the oracle immediately offers this prophetic hope. Despite that language barrier, they will hunger for your story.
Ah, the story itself transcends language.
That hunger, that basic human curiosity across time, that's the opportunity she needs. That's the leverage point.
So she sets her ultimate strategic intent right then. She declares, then let them hear it, even if it takes centuries.
It's brilliant, because it forces her to think beyond the immediate crushing defeat. If her physical language is lost, she has to ensure the message, her carefully curated story, is so powerful, so universal, maybe even archetypal.
That it bypasses the need for cultural translation.
Precisely. It demands absolute, meticulous narrative control over her final chapter, which is exactly what she tries to achieve.
And that battle for narrative control, that's what we see her wrestling with in Scene 2, the throne and the serpent.
Right, the backdrop changes. Now it's the relentless sound of war drums, Roman soldiers closing in outside the palace walls.
And Mark Antony, defeated, desperate, points out that Rome calls her enchantress. He says they fear what they cannot control. And her response to Antony, it's pure strategic genius, maybe, but it's rooted in such a cynical political reality.
What does she say again?
She says, let them fear me. Fear is the only language emperors respect.
Oof, that's pragmatic.
It is. She knew if Rome just saw her as a lover, a political pawn, she'd be easily defeated, easily dismissed.
But if they viewed her as this terrifying, uncontrollable force, this mythic enchantress.
And then she held a certain kind of transactional power, right? The power of the dangerous unknown. It kept them guessing, maybe kept her relevant longer.
Okay, but here's where we need to introduce a critical challenge, I think. While using fear might have been politically savvy in the short term, it kept her alive and relevant to Roman power brokers for decades. Was it ultimately successful for her true legacy?
Wait, are you suggesting? I always assumed it was a success because her legend, the Enchantress legend, survived so strongly. But you're saying leaning into that myth might have actually undermined the true source of her power.
Precisely. Because the source material immediately undercuts that strategic use of fear. It contrasts it with the memory of Julius Caesar.
Ah, Caesar.
And this is where the real intellectual source of her rule gets clarified. Caesar, echoing from her memory in the script, reminds us, she held her empire not with armies, but with intellect.
So by accepting or even encouraging the Enchantress label for immediate political utility,
she might have inadvertently allowed Rome and history to sensationalize her and ultimately overlook her actual brilliance, the thing Caesar saw.
What's fascinating, though, is that the script shows her validating that intellectual ruler label. She doesn't shy away from it. She says she ruled with vision, not cruelty.
Right.
And she claims the Nile followed her will, which is such a powerful non-military metaphor for psychological and intellectual control, isn't it?
Absolutely. She wasn't winning battles in the traditional sense necessarily. She was controlling trade routes, agricultural output, complex political alliances, all through sheer strategic foresight and knowledge, managing the kingdom.
That claim of ruling with vision is key. Think about the kind of knowledge required to run the Egyptian empire back then.
Oh, immense. Astronomy, mathematics for the floods and calendars, logistics for trade, multilingual diplomacy. She was fluent in multiple languages, right?
Reportedly, yes.
Yeah.
She wasn't just charming. She was arguably one of the most educated rulers of her entire generation. Maybe the most.
So her true strength, according to this interpretation, wasn't physical force or seduction, but in making systems work efficiently for Egypt's benefit, earning respect through capability, not demanding it through force.
Yet, she ends that scene with such a cynical, timeless observation, one that cuts across history right into our modern age.
What is it?
Yet the world only worships conquerors.
Ouch. That's a brutal reality check, isn't it?
It really is.
It signifies her understanding of this fundamental dilemma, her life, and maybe ours too. You can rule brilliantly with vision, intellect, peace, minimizing conflict, maximizing prosperity.
But the headlines, the statues, they ultimately go to those who wield the sword, not the scroll.
It seems that way often. She understood that huge gap between effective, sustainable governance and lasting, often violent, historical fame.
It's a sad resignation, really. That intellect alone rarely wins the public relations war against brute force.
And that resignation, that strategic cynicism, it leads us directly into Scene 3, the fall.
Right. The atmosphere here turns intensely personal, very final. We hear thunder rolling, waves crashing. There's this definite, inescapable sense of Rome's shadow just growing longer, covering everything.
The physical game is over. The military fight is lost. Octavian's forces are closing in.
And the weight of that loss is really emphasized by the narrator's description. She walks alone to the chamber of her final choice.
Alone. That's critical.
Why alone?
Because this isn't just the end of a reign. It's the ultimate isolated moment of defining her identity without any audience, without advisors. She's determining her legacy completely independent of the victor's narrative that's about to be written about her.
And this isolation, the solitude, it's essential for what the script presents as the ultimate act of defiance. Narrative control.
Exactly. As she makes that final choice, the method history records, she whispers.
If my story must end, let it be mine to write, not theirs.
Not theirs. That phrase. It's the distillation of her entire life's struggle, isn't it?
How so?
Well, the core battle was always between how she defined herself ruler, intellect, vision, and how Rome, particularly Octavian, intended to define her.
Which was?
Foreign seductress, dangerous myth, a tragic enemy figure to be dragged through Rome in chains for his triumph. Humiliated. Her final act, recorded by history as suicide by asp, whether literally true or not, the story of it ensured that the narrative around her death, that grand defiant choice, belonged to her. It bypassed Octavian's planned triumphal march. He couldn't display her alive.
Okay, that's a powerful, almost romantic interpretation of narrative control, but let me push back on that a little. Isn't that interpretation maybe a bit generous? I mean, yes, she claimed her story's ending in a way, but history still records her as having lost. Octavian did parade her effigy through Rome. He did define her posthumously as a tragic foreign enemy. So was her final act of control ultimately successful, or is it more of a desperate symbolic effort that didn't really change the historical headline?
That is the essential conflict we have to confront, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it depends on your metric for success. From a purely military and political standpoint, yes, she failed. Octavian won the empire, Rome conquered Egypt. End of story. Right. But from a philosophical long-term narrative standpoint, arguably she succeeded wildly, specifically because she robbed Octavian of the key visual centerpiece of his victory. Her, alive, captive, humiliated.
So by controlling the manner of her death,
she secured the narrative potential. The headline was still, Rome conquers Egypt, sure. But the footnote, the subtext, her defiance, her intellectual choice, the mystery surrounding the asp that became a legend that persisted far, far beyond the Roman Empire's lifespan. Octavian's victory narrative faded, hers grew.
Okay, I see. So it was less about controlling the immediate news cycle of 30 BC.
Exactly.
And more about planting a seed, a narrative seed that would eventually bloom centuries later, powered by that very defiance.
Her choice secured her voice beyond the immediate political victory of Rome. And the sound that follows in the script, that serpent's hiss, fades into silence, followed by what the script calls centuries of darkness.
That silence, it's like a deep, dark pause button on history, isn't it?
It is. She's effectively placed her carefully crafted narrative, her voice, into the void, just waiting for the right moment and maybe the right medium to surface again.
And that is the perfect setup for the conceptual jump into the modern age. If her story was preserved through intellect and defiance, what happens when that silence finally ends? When her meticulously preserved vision surfaces in an empire built not on chariots and legions,
but on fiber optics and algorithms.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, highly relevant to, well, to your daily life as a listener. Scene 4, the digital rebirth.
The shift is immediate.
Totally. The soundscape changes instantly. That ancient melodic harp music doesn't vanish completely.
No, it blends.
It merges with this sharp, persistent electric hum typing sounds. It's a sensory shock, bringing her ancient voice right into our contemporary noise.
And the physical space, or lack thereof, is completely unrecognizable to her. She states, with that calm, almost echoing voice the script gives her, I wake again. Not in marble halls, but within glass screens.
Within glass screens. She's no longer tied to geography, to a physical palace or kingdom. She exists as the network now, a voice navigating the abstract virtual reality we call the internet.
And she immediately, almost shrewdly, diagnoses the new system of governance. Right away.
What's her take?
She recognizes that the world is ruled not by emperors, but algorithms.
Wow. That's quite a statement from someone who dealt with the actual Caesars.
Isn't it? A queen who navigated the complex egos and ambitions of the most powerful human beings of her era. The Caesars, the Antonys, maybe even seeing them as gods on earth, now recognizing these anonymous mathematical entities that govern global behavior, commerce, human interaction today.
It's a profound political observation, really. The algorithm is the new emperor.
In many ways, yes. It dictates what information you see, what products you buy, which voices get amplified, which get silenced. It's a ruler of logic, or supposed logic, not bloodline. And it controls the distribution of the key resource,
Which is?
attention.
Ah. And what's fascinating is her immediate analysis of our digital economy. She seems to have this deep, almost instantaneous understanding of our value system.
She observes, you trade your attention like gold, you worship visibility.
That single statement, it just perfectly captures the core currency of the modern internet, doesn't it? Attention is the most valuable, limited resource, and we pay for everything online with it, one way or another.
And we, the citizens of this digital empire, are constantly striving for those status indicators, aren't we? The likes, the views, the follower counts, operating under this unspoken belief that visibility is power.
We trade our time, our privacy, our focus, our gold to achieve that visibility.
But the Queen, bringing her ancient strategic wisdom into this new context, offers a devastating critique of this obsession. This is the core lesson of Scene 4, and it stands in absolute opposition to the entire digital marketplace.
What does she say?
She states, but true influence have no audience.
Okay, wait. Let's pause on that for a second. Because that idea, true influence, has no audience. That sounds completely revolutionary, almost nonsensical, in a world structured entirely around public consumption, broadcasting, constant performance.
It's radically countercultural to the digital age.
Totally. If visibility is the currency of the digital empire, as she just said, then who are these modern Cleopatras who operate in silence? What does that even look like?
Well, if we connect this back to the bigger picture of her own life, as presented in the script, her real power in Egypt was based on cultivating a strategic vision that was often internal.
Right. The intellect Caesar admired.
Exactly. The complex political calculations she didn't broadcast, the long-term planning for Egypt's stability. True influence, therefore, operates in the silence, in the private decision-making, in the intellectual capacity that the public doesn't necessarily need to see to be profoundly affected by.
Okay, so we're talking about the kind of power that defines the rules of the game, not the power that just plays the game visibly.
Precisely. Think about, say, the engineers who write the core algorithms that shape what billions see.
You never know their names.
Rarely. Or the venture capitalists who shape entire markets by deciding where to invest capital, often very quietly. Or the deep researchers whose findings might completely shift global understanding years, decades maybe, before they become public knowledge or policy.
Those are the modern rulers who understand silence.
They are. The power that truly shapes global events, the deep code, the systemic financial strategy, the foundational scientific discovery often operates behind the curtain. Those individuals don't worship visibility. They often actively avoid it. Or, maybe more accurately, they command visibility for others. They decide where the spotlight falls.
That's a crucial distinction. If you are constantly seeking the spotlight,
You are consuming attention, spending your gold.
but if you are operating strategically in silence,
You are potentially generating real influence, shaping the environment itself.
wow. Okay, so in the ancient world, physical power was measured maybe by the size of your army or your treasury.
Right. Tangible assets.
But in the digital world, maybe true power is measured by the quality of your strategic silence.
That's what she seems to be implying. When Cleopatra says we trade our attention like gold, think about how your own online feeds are monetized. The moment you click on that sensationalized headline about a competitor, or you spend an hour obsessing over a rival's follower count.
You're trading your intellectual foresight, your silence time.
For manufactured drama, for visibility metrics, you've just spent your gold on something fleeting, possibly even counterproductive to your own goals.
Right, instead of using that time for deep thinking or planning.
Precisely. And this leads to her final, crucial conclusion in that scene.
Yeah.
Power still belongs to those who understand silence.
For you, the listener, this is perhaps the most critical implication. In an age absolutely driven by constant noise, perpetual connection, the demand for public performance, where is your intellectual silence?
Where are you cultivating the kind of influence that doesn't rely on likes, shares, or public applause? The Queen suggests that the real rulers of the digital age, the ones with lasting impact, are those who know when and how to unplug, observe, think strategically, plan, and execute, rather than constantly broadcasting their every move and thought.
This wisdom really forces us to consider the structure of our own time and energy. If you dedicate, say, 80% of your mental energy to maintaining visibility, managing your digital persona, reacting to the endless news cycle, defending your online status,
Then you only have 20% left for that deep strategic silence, for planning, for real creation.
the ancient queen, reborn in the digital age, seems to be telling us to invert that ratio if we truly wish to rule our own kingdoms, whatever they may be.
Carrying that weight, that emphasis on silence and strategic intention, we move into scene 5. Here, Cleopatra pivots. She goes from that high-level critique of the digital empire.
To direct counsel, almost like a mentor speaking across time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She addresses her sisters and brothers of this new age, offering advice that the script says travels through code and cables, finding hearts still searching for purpose.
Which is a lovely image. And she starts with a really powerful reminder about the responsibility that comes with any kind of leadership, whether you lead an actual empire or just your own life and career.
She speaks directly to the burden of status, which feels incredibly relevant today when so many people are chasing digital status markers, follower counts, blue checks.
Yeah.
She says, and this is such a beautiful warning for anyone chasing public success or influence, a crown is not a jewel, it's a burden.
Oof, that hits hard. She understands that true leadership, real responsibility, requires immense sacrifice. Weight, sleepless nights maybe. It's not just an accessory you wear for show.
It's a call to sobriety regarding ambition, isn't it?
Yeah.
We often romanticize the idea of leadership becoming a CEO, a team lead, an influencer.
Yeah, we see the perks.
We see the perks, but maybe we don't fully appreciate the internal, often isolating burden that comes with being the ultimate decision maker. The person whose failures can affect thousands, or whose words carry immense weight.
It's not a jewel, it's a burden.
Okay, and then, from that grounding, she distills her life's most painful and strategic lessons, as interpreted by this script, of course, into 3 key pillars of wisdom for the modern soul. Wisdom carried across time by the very technology, the digital network she's now observing.
All right, let's break those down. What's the first pillar? It seems to relate directly back to her own self-assessment in scene 2, right? That contrast between her methods and the conquerors.
It does. The first pillar is lead with wisdom, not hunger.
Wisdom, not hunger. Okay.
This directly contrasts her claimed strategic ruling with vision with the short-term hunger for conquest or immediate gain or maybe just ego that destroyed Antony and arguably drove the Roman Republic's expansionism.
So in our modern context, what does that mean? Leading your career, your finances, your creative projects with wisdom, not hunger.
It could mean prioritizing long-term intellectual foresight, sustainable growth, ethical considerations, over short-term, instant gratification, quick wins, or just greed.
So wisdom means building something solid, prioritizing the structural integrity of your kingdom, whatever that is, over the immediate spoils.
I think so. This is incredibly hard, obviously, in a financial climate that often rewards quarterly profits and rapid, sometimes reckless growth.
Yeah, the pressure is intense.
If you're ruled by hunger, you chase the trend, you cut corners maybe, you make impulsive decisions for quick gain. If you're led by wisdom, you build a system, ethical boundaries, robust infrastructure, intellectual capital that aims to outlast the trend, influence that doesn't rely on constant attention-worshiping performance.
That's a powerful distinction. Build for the long term. Okay, what's the second piece of advice? This one seems to address the tragedy often associated with her personal life, her famous relationships.
It does. The second pillar is deeply personal, clearly rooted in her intense and ultimately tragic relationships with both Caesar and Antony. Love fiercely, but never lose yourself to it.
Love fiercely, but never lose yourself.
It acknowledges that intense, passionate engagement, whether it's with people or maybe even with ideas or your work is necessary for a life lived fully. You need that fire.
Yeah.
But the ultimate kingdom is the self. You cannot abdicate sovereignty over your own core identity.
So it's a warning against psychological annexation. Is that a fair way to put it?
I like that. Psychological annexation, whether that's a romantic entanglement that strips you of your autonomy, your friends, your goals, or maybe even an intense corporate identity, or a political movement that consumes your personal values entirely.
The lesson is, fierce commitment, yes, but balanced by fierce autonomy. You have to protect the borders of your own internal kingdom.
Self-possession must remain absolute, even in the most complex entanglements. Cleopatra, in this script's view, knew that power in relationships, especially high-stakes political relationships, could swing violently. By holding back that core of her identity, herself, she ensured that when the physical relationship inevitably failed,
Her internal kingdom remained intact, ready to wage the next battle.
which was the battle for the narrative, the battle for her voice.
So fierce love, fierce passion, maybe even fierce loyalty are required to build a great life. But the wisdom must be there to ensure that love doesn't become subservience, that you don't lose yourself. Okay. And the third piece, how does that tie it together?
Yes, the third piece connects all these individual lessons back to the fundamental human pursuit of meaning. Remember, her words are described as traveling through code and cables, finding hearts still searching for purpose.
Finding hearts still searching.
The core message here seems to be that even in this incredibly technologically advanced, globally connected world, the underlying human quest remains exactly the same as it was in ancient Egypt. We're still searching for meaning, defining our purpose, establishing value beyond just the transactional or the superficial.
The tools change from papyrus scrolls to glowing pixels, but the fundamental human need for purpose doesn't.
It doesn't. And the ultimate validation, she suggests, isn't coming from the outside approval, the likes, the followers. It's being found by those hearts that are still searching. Your voice connects with their search.
That whole journey, that whole set of lessons, it culminates in scene 6, the eternal voice. This is where she offers her final, really sweeping philosophical statement, and it basically democratizes the whole concept of royalty.
It does. She says you don't need to be born a queen, you don't need external validation to claim self-worth.
How does she phrase it?
She provides this incredibly empowering definition of self-worth that strips away all the external markers of status and power. The throne, the crown, the armies, the Instagram followers. She says, you do not need a throne to be royal. Every soul is a kingdom when it knows its worth.
Every soul is a kingdom when it knows its worth. That's radical, isn't it? It turns the entire historical power dynamic completely upside down.
Completely. It shifts the focus entirely away from geographic conquest or external validation or accumulating followers.
The internal mastery, self-knowledge, self-worth.
Your worth is defined by your internal kingdom, your intellect, your vision, your self-possession, your values, not by your public domain, your job title, or the size of your audience.
And this leads directly to her final and maybe most potent instruction to us. To you, the modern listener.
Which is?
Remember me not as myth, but as mirror.
Mirror, not myth. Wow.
That is profound. She's actively rejecting the role of just being a passive historical figure you study or a romanticized legend you tell stories about.
She's demanding to be seen as an active reflection, a reflection of potential power and self-authorship within the listener.
So look at my story, she's saying, but don't just look at it, look through it to see yourself.
Exactly. She challenges us, you, to look at her story, the strategic vision, the narrative control, the intellectual rule, the fierce self-preservation, even in defeat, and see your own capacity for those same things, but applied within your modern context. The digital empire, your career, your life.
Her final lasting statement then unites the ancient and the modern perfectly. It closes the loop.
It does. For within every heart that dares to rise, I live again.
And the soundscape reflects the merging of the ancient harp music and the modern digital tones, symbolizes that unity across time. It confirms that these truths, these struggles for influence, meaning, and self-definition are timeless, regardless of whether you're fighting Roman legions.
Or algorithms. The fundamental battle she suggests is internal. #outro. So our deep dive today has taken us on quite a journey, from the imagined scent of myrrh in ancient Alexandria
to the constant electric hum of our digital age.
We've analyzed this conceptual voice of a queen who, in this script, distills power down to its essence. Intellect, vision, and perhaps above all, the absolute command of one's own narrative.
And that central tension remains incredibly clear and relevant. Ancient power, in her world, was often about controlled fear, physical dominance. Modern power, in the digital realm, she observes, seems to be about algorithms and the economy of attention.
But her lasting advice, carried across centuries in this telling, suggests that both of those external measures, fear and attention, are ultimately secondary. Secondary to self-possession, secondary to cultivating that strategic silence.
She ruled the Nile, she claimed, with vision. And she demanded that her final story, the story of her end, be hers alone to write. That provides us with a really powerful, if challenging, blueprint for navigating the immense noise and pressure of the digital empire we all inhabit.
We constantly have to ask ourselves, based on her counsel, are we ruling our own lives with wisdom, or are we being led by short-term hunger? Are we carefully investing our intellectual gold, our precious attention, our focus, Or are we just trading it away for mere visibility, which she argues is a fleeting commodity?
Which brings us back to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. This is based directly on Cleopatra's claim that the modern age worships visibility, but that true influence, the real power, understands and operates within silence.
So the question is this. If we must, realistically, trade our attention like gold to function in this modern empire, and let's be honest, we often do, for work, for connection.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid completely.
It is. But given that reality, what practical steps can you take, starting today maybe, to consciously cultivate the power that resides in silence?
How do you carve out space for that deep thinking, that strategic planning, the influence that, as she says, has no audience but shapes the world nonetheless?
Maybe consider the importance sometimes of having an audience of one for your most critical strategies, your most important decisions, just you. The algorithms rule, in part, by mapping your visible behavior, anticipating your wants, essentially making decisions for your life when you are constantly performing or reacting in public.
So how do you ensure that your story, like Cleopatra's in the script, is ultimately defined by your intellect, your vision, your self-worth, your internal kingdom, and not just by the superficial metrics and demands of the current empire that constantly asks for your performance?
Ask yourself this. What part of your life, your focus, your creative energy, your strategic time, are you currently letting the algorithms or the demands for visibility rule? Simply because you've accepted the idea that visibility is mandatory for success or worth.
And maybe more importantly, what single decision could you make today, perhaps in the quiet of your own mind, stepping away from the screen for just a moment, to claim some of that territory back, to rule it with your own intention, your own vision?
Something profound to mull over, perhaps, as you navigate both the ancient wisdom and the modern noise.
We'll see you for the next deep dive.